Al-Jabbar, the one who compels. Al-Jabbar is taken from the word Jabr, which means to compel. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قَالُوا يَا مُوسَى إِنَّ فِيهَا قَوْمًا جَبَّارِينَ. O Musa, inside of that city, Al-Quds, are a people who are Jabbareen, they're tyrannical in strength. And indeed, we won't enter it until they leave it. But if they leave it, then we will enter. And so the children of Israel are telling Musa that they won't enter Jerusalem, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala free it from occupation and all of Palestine, until these strong Jabbar people leave it. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا أَنْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ بِجَبَّارٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and you are not over them, O Muhammad, a Jabbar, meaning you can't compel him. And so this word, a Jabbar, appears in a number of places. Of it is that verse that I just mentioned in Surah Qaf, where the Prophet ﷺ is being told, you can't compel people to believe in the truth. All you can do is remind them with the Quran. So what does this name mean regarding Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Allah is Al-Jabbar. It means that He compels us. We don't get to choose our date of birth, the century that we live in, the parents that we have, the genetic makeup of our bodies, our height, our features. There's much of our existence that we have no choice in. We are compelled by Al-Jabbar. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala compels. But when Allah compels, He's the most wise and the most just and the most merciful and the most compassionate. And so His compelling us is in what's best for us. But when human beings who have the defining attributes of being dhulum and jahula, oppressive and ignorant, when they seek to compel others to do what they wish, then that attribute is by an extension an oppressive attribute. And these people are called jabbars, they are tyrants. And so the word may be shared between Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His creation, but it's beautiful and praiseworthy when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has this attribute, and it may be evil and negative when human beings have that attribute. And on the Day of Judgment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will challenge all of the jabbars of earth, all of the tyrants. Abdullah ibn Umar, he reports that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will fold the heavens on the Day of Judgment, and He would place them in His right hand. And He would say, where are the arrogant? And then He would fold the earth and He would place it in His left hand, and He would say, I am the king, where are the haughty? Where are the proud? Where are the arrogant? And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a Jabbar. But there's a second beautiful meaning to this name, and that is الَّذِي يَجْبُرُ كَسْرَهُم, the one who fixes our brokenness. Because when you have a bone that's broken, what must be done? You have to compel the bones back together. And so a splint in Arabic is called a jabira because it serves that function of compelling the bones back together. And so you fix our brokenness by compelling our pieces back together. And so when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a Jabbar, it means He's the one who fixes. He's the one who fixes our brokenness. Ya Jabbar, fix my broken faith, fix my broken body, fix my broken relationships, fix my broken confidence, fix my brokenness. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, when making his dua between the two sajdas, Allahumma ghfirli, warhamni, wajburni, wahdini, warzuqni. Oh Allah, forgive me and have mercy on me and fix me and guide me and provide for me. This is a beautiful dua that we should learn. So how do you interact with this name? The name of Allah, Al-Jabbar. One of the great ways to interact with this name is to fix the brokenness of others. What's called Jabr al-Khatir, that you console others in their time of brokenness, that you carry someone in their time or in their moments of weakness or doubt, and that you inspire them and that you correct their course. And one of the greatest moments, one of the greatest examples of that is Khadija radiallahu anha. When the Prophet ﷺ came back from the cave of Hira after that terrifying experience, and he simply says to her, Zammiluni, Zammiluni, cover me up, cover me up. And they covered him until his fear was over. And then the Prophet ﷺ explains to Khadija everything that happened. And then he says to her, لَقَدْ خَشِيتُ عَلَى نَفْسِي, I'm like, I fear for myself. And what does Khadija say in that moment? She says, Kalla wallah, never, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will never disgrace you. You keep good relations with your family. You help the poor and the destitute. You serve your guests. And you assist people who are in need, the deserving calamity afflicted ones. The hadith is in Bukhari. These words that the world never forgot of Khadija, and it was a moment of consolation to the Prophet ﷺ. And if the Prophet ﷺ told us that bringing happiness to a Muslim is one of the most pleasing acts to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so what do you think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will do with a person who brings relief to a Muslim from a sadness that hangs over them or a worry that envelops them? Right? That Jabr al-Khatir, that consolation is one of the greatest acts that a person can do. The Prophet ﷺ would sit with Abu Umair, the young boy whose bird died, named al-Nughair. And in that boy's grief, that young boy's grief, the Prophet ﷺ would take the time to console him and speak with him and say, Ya Aba Umair, ma fa'al al-Nughair? Oh, Abu Umair, what happened to al-Nughair? What are some of the fruits of this name? You know, whenever there are names that have to do with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's power, Allah's strength, whether it's Al-Qawi or Al-Jabbar or Al-Qahhar or Al-Aziz or any of these names that have to do with Allah's power, there's always two consistent fruits that I want you to know. The first fruit is tawakkul, and the second fruit is taqwa. The fruit of tawakkul meaning that I rely upon Al-Jabbar. I never feel overwhelmed no matter who's standing against me, no matter how outnumbered I am, because behind me is a Lord who is Jabbar. You know, when the people said, "Inna an-nasa qad jama'u lakum," that the people have gathered against you, so fear them. They said, "Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakeel." They said, Allah is sufficient for us and He's the best disposer of affairs. And so the number of people, the fact that they had gathered didn't deter the believers because they knew that they had Allah and that's sufficient. And everyone who has no one has Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But who is Allah? He's Al-Jabbar. The second fruit, however, is taqwa. That you're careful to not be deluded by your own power, your own strength, your own ability. That you don't use it to oppress anyone. Why? Because behind that person is a Lord who is Jabbar. So you don't become a tyrant because Al-Jabbar is behind everybody who's wronged. I don't oppress this person because behind them is a Lord who is overpowering, a Lord who is a compeller. And the last thing that I want to leave you with is, who are the worst people to be a Jabbar to? Think about it. Who are the worst people that you could possibly be tyrannical to? Your parents. That they raise you and give you from their life force until you become strong and independent of them. And then you turn around and use that strength that was nourished from them, by them, to compel them. And that's an attribute that's negated in the introduction of two great messengers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Maryam. In the introduction of Yahya, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَبَرًّا بِوَالِدَيْهِ وَلَمْ يَكُنْ جَبَّارًا عَصِيًّا. That he is dutiful to his parents. And he's not Jabbar, he's not a tyrant to his parents who's disobedient. And when Isa alayhi salam introduces himself in Surah Maryam, he says, وَبَرًّا بِوَالِدَتِي وَلَمْ يَجْعَلْنِي جَبَّارًا شَقِيًّا. And I'm dutiful to my mother. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't make me Jabbar. He didn't make me tyrannical, and He didn't make me shaqiyya. He didn't make me wretched. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Al-Jabbar, to fix our brokenness, to fix our broken faith, to fix our broken relationships, to fix our broken confidence. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Al-Jabbar, fix everything within us that is broken.